Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. And today in the virtual studio, I have John Bartmann. And John is a composer, a podcaster. He's doing a lot of interesting things. And I really like the way he's put together his career musically through lots of different angles, using his music and songwriting to do all kinds of things, from music licensing to creating and editing podcasts, scoring, soundtrack. And he's got a lot of licensing music out there that people can use in their own sounds. His podcast called How I Make Music is a really awesome podcast for anyone interested in not only just music production and songwriting, but even just the production aspect of the podcast itself is really fun. There's a lot of levels to enjoy it. And whereas this is a podcast where it's more or less hit record and send it out, John's podcast, How I Make Music, is much more in-depth and much more produced, and it makes a really engaging sonic storytelling. So I'm excited to have John here today. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today, John. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Brian. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here, and absolutely no trouble. It's a Saturday afternoon in sunny Cape Town today. Right. You might hear some kids screaming in the background. That's just my neighbors.
Okay. I have dogs, as we mentioned earlier, that like to participate sometimes. So they could be off in the distance somewhere, co-hosts.
All good.
Yeah. So it's really nice to talk to you on a couple levels, because for one, I love what you're doing with the podcast, and as a podcaster myself, I find like the production you do really interesting. And I also think it's really nice how you're providing music for other people, other artists that are doing any kind of work, really, whether they're, I guess, YouTubers, podcasters themselves, or doing film. You seem to have like really taken your talents and skills and applied them to a lot of different areas.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what it might. That's how the story has unfolded. I've just been chasing a rabbit, I suppose, pretty much continuously since I started using, computers to make things, and it's been a natural sort of curiosity that's led me to this point. And at the moment, I can say I know how to put together a pretty engaging podcast and create music, like you do, on a variety of different instruments. And it's nice to be at this point in my life. I'm 39 now, where I've got this kind of broad view. I'm like, okay, cool. You don't actually have to like be a hit, and you don't have to excel in any department. It's okay to just be like, to just have a lot of things on the go. It keeps me entertained, and that, at the end of the day, it provides benefit to other people, and that brings joy to me. But ultimately, my motivation is just staying curious and staying awake and staying active in the field of music and audio,
Mm-hmm. How did you get going? Were you playing music as a kid? Did you come into it later?
Oh, yeah, pretty much, yeah. I've got an older brother and sister, and my sister was kind of musical, and during school, she'd come home and I'd copy whatever she'd learned on the piano. And so from a young age, I was learning piano. Then I took 5 years when I was 10 to study violin, and then I dropped that because I found the guitar. And as everyone knows, when you're 15, there's no competition between violin and guitar. So guitar won that little fight. But in the short run, because by the time I'd gone through my 20s, where I played in a church band, drums, and then in my 20s I got into electronic music with Reason. And then it all circled back to my late 20s, where I'm like, oh man, I got to get back on the violin. So about 12 years ago now, I started playing violin again every day. And I've played pretty much continuously since then. It's the one I take the most seriously. It's the one that I practice like for an hour every day. And I've played in the basements at schools where I've taught, and in the forest, and in the car, and wherever, just to keep the habit alive, just to keep the practice routine alive. And now it starts to yield more. The more you put in, the more you get out, And I think that truism kind of it gives you back more than you think in the long run. The longer you do something, the longer you stick with something, the more like exponential return you get. That's kind of how I see it now. So I got a spring in my step these days. It's been a long time to get here, but yeah, very, very happy to be here and happy to be sharing this with you, man. So yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's cool what you're doing. I think it's kind of neat that you came back to the violin. And did you say you were giving lessons in the forest? Did I hear you right there?
Yeah, I was giving lessons in the forest, but that was a totally different thing. We were just burning people. And we were. I would go to a forest where I taught English, like you. I was an English teacher for a while,
Okay.
and to beat the traffic, instead of practicing my violin at home and then getting in the car, I decided to drive to the school, park there, and then take a quick walk into the nearby woods and do my violin practice there. And I did that for about a year while I was teaching. And the funny thing is, during that time, there was a guy because in Cape Town we got a lot of unemployed people, and there was a guy who lived on the mountain, and every morning he would come down and just kind of hang around for a while I was practicing. Like he'd wake up and walk down the mountain to get water or whatever. And we got chatting every morning, and then I started to, bring him a flask of coffee and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what happened to him, but he was my morning, kind of part of my morning ritual for a while,
Oh, wow. That is cool.
Very exciting little meeting of a very unlikely sort of meeting, like one person playing violin in the woods and another one walking down the mountain to sell blue movies for money. Yeah,
it's funny. A few years back now, I guess when I first got a computer for recording, I took it out into the woods by my house and with a mic because I wanted to get some nature sounds. And there's this one spot where the path goes underneath the highway. So I'd gotten up early. I wanted like the birds chirping and kind of nature just coming awake. And I found this guy in this like tunnel underground with a flute playing. And he was, I guess I'd seen him after that time. I ran into him a couple more times. But I put my stuff on the other end of the tunnel, and I was just recording his like flute for just kind of ambient sounds. But it kind of reminds me of what you're saying there, just to, there's something like nice about taking an instrument out into a nice spot and just playing it.
Yeah, it's the dream, if I could work in the forest, sit down with my studio set up and work in the forest, that'd be ideal. And like that guy's in the tunnel, how good instruments sound when you're like in a tunnel,
Yeah,
there was
thing.
another chap, he took us to he had a slide didgeridoo. This was a friend of mine from Cape Town, slide didge. So you could adjust the pitch to within about, I think, 2 or 3 semitones. You slide it out like 2 feet, and that buys you like, one tone. And we took it into the subway near where I live, just just under the railway line. And he would find the resonant frequency of that space on this didge, and the entire space. I can't even describe it. It's like you were inside like a pressure cooker or something. Like all of the air in that entire space was just like humming. You could feel it, like you could feel the air in your lungs vibrating.
Wow.
Because you are now a part of that particular little energy disruption. It was a hell of an experience. And along the way, there've been those types of things, for you too, those moments that you remember and you hold on to, like meeting a guy who plays a flute in the forest or whatever. And these are the things that actually keep us going, because we're so like fascinated by it, and they keep our childlike fascination alive. And when it comes down time to like do the work, that's what keeps us going, like this desire to like keep the magic alive,
Yeah, it's true. It's inspiring, and it makes it gives you ideas. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of some of the. I didn't mention your band Pravda, but I noticed you have a blog on there, and there's a lot of like kind of philosophical stuff about like maintaining your sense of wonder and and imagination, really. Is that something you'd like to try to keep in your own work? Is there a way you try to maintain that in what you do?
Yeah, I suppose. It's almost like involuntary though, Brian. I've got to a point now where I realize what I am and what I'm not, and what by that I mean there's always going to be a philosophical bent to my work. And I noticed this also with, a couple of the previous episodes of your show. You chatting to the violinist, what is his name? Todd Williams, one of the recent episodes. Todd Reynolds. And you guys go deep into stuff that, to the outside listeners, like, I signed up for a music podcast. And it's like, you're talking about mortality and you're talking about stuff that matters. And it comes down to that for me, like, whether you're doing music or anything else, like what matters. And I found like there isn't an outlet, this is not the type of stuff that you really can speak about at the dinner table because, this is my night out or whatever. People want to have fun. And then I realized in my songwriting, which I've written this kind of, I've tried to deal with my, the sort of the depth with which I try to approach life. And I know that sounds cheesy or whatever, but those songs also, you only reach the people that know who you are anyway. And the goal of this work is to provide something for someone else that's independent of my personal relationship with them. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but what I would like is to really inspire. I'd like to really genuinely inspire other people. And so whenever I get the chance, I write that kind of stuff down. Some of it's about e-commerce. Some of it's like inspired by Seth Godin. Do you know Seth Godin and that whole school of thought?
Yeah, I read his blog every day. He posts every day for the last 25 years.
Dude, 7,000 posts or something.
Yeah.
It's like the Mac Daddy of blogging. So the whole thing with that is, of course, just rather reach people in a way that lasts and that's personal, and avoid the temptation to just try and compete on a superficial level. And this is the reason that even after 20 years, or let's say 15 years, I've been publishing stuff online for 15 years. I've learned how to, make music and art and stuff and put it online. And the reason that I'm still not a hit is because I've never wanted to just quickly have like a little bit of inspiration. I want the people. I want to form relationships through the work. So that's what the blog is about on the site, and it's for the same reason that I reached out to you, with no idea that you were going to turn around and ask me to talk today and have this conversation with you. I wanted to say thank you, for the work that you've done, and for those, obviously no one really knows this, but the link up between Brian and me happened here when I wrote a song called Love is Calling, and I produced it and published it as a release from my band Pravda. And the song that I wrote involved some of the samples that I used from Brian's Gumroad store, where he makes Ableton Live Packs. And it was some VHS samples, some old songs. I've used some of your samples from the VHS sample pack that you've released on a track that I wrote called Love is Calling, and I wanted to share that with you. So listen in the beginning of this track. Right at the beginning, you'll hear the sound of some 80s sounding synths, and then you'll hear the sound of what sounds like a VHS being put into a VHS machine. And both of those, the synths and the VHS, were proudly done by Brian Funk. And they're one of his downloadable asset packs, which I've actually gone ahead and used in the song. And then he invited me to come talk today. So check out this track by my band. Well, it's more like a production outfit, Pravda. And the name of this track is Love is Calling. I'll just play a short snippet of it right at the beginning so you can hear. So Brian's done the emotional labor of sitting down with a mic and recording the VHS and then putting it online and making it easy and putting it on sale, and then people use it. And so it's like this reciprocal generosity, and I just wanted to say thank you. And now it's ratcheted up even one more time, where you're turning around and saying, "Well, thank you." And now there's an invitation to to be on the show and to talk, and that is now going to turn around so that I go and tell everyone I know, "Hey, I was on this great show," and then more people are aware of you and what you're doing. And so it's this type of everybody passing the ball forward kind of mentality, rather than everybody trying to, score the touchdown themselves. And I think we've got to learn to cooperate and adapt. It's quite a matter of urgency, in my opinion. And so I'm trying to be a part of that,
I get emails all the time that are clearly not to me. And they might even have my name in the beginning. It's like, "Hey, Brian, we really like your show/song/ like it literally still has that in there. And I read this article of yours about racks, and then like they want me to share a link about like racks, meaning like Ableton Live racks, and they want me to share a link about like racks for your garage to like hang stuff on. They think it's relevant. And it's so impersonal, make-believe personal, that it's almost like more insulting than if it was totally spam.
Yeah.
And
I see what you mean. Yeah. If you got an ad that was completely unrelated to what you do, you'd feel like, okay, well, it's just spam. But I know. Well, that's what happens when you live in a time where the cost of sending a message is zero and the cost of reproducing information is zero.
But I think like the time you would like you could send off 1,000 of those in a couple clicks, right? I think the return on that is probably so small compared to if you spent the time to just write a couple personal messages. It goes so much further. When I get stuff in my email that I can tell is not really for me, and maybe like very loosely it's some kind of publicity agent or someone else that's got whatever they're trying to do to promote their work, and it doesn't feel like it's for me, that's permission for me to ignore it and delete it, because there's enough stuff coming in as it is. I need to kind of decide what I can ignore and what I can forget, so I can actually put attention to the things that matter. So when you get something like personal, when you take the time to make the personal connection, it goes so much further. And expressing that gratitude is really powerful. It reminds me of something I did myself back a few years back now. So I'm a high school English teacher, as you said, and I got switched to the other high school. They can just transfer you, they don't have enough teachers here. They can put you to this other school. There's 2 in my district where I work. And so I was a little disappointed. I didn't really want to go. I was comfortable where I was. But, what am I going to do? I might as well see it as an opportunity to meet new people and stuff. But I decided to write certain people at my job a thank you note. Like I got a pack of thank you cards, and I had some downtime at the end of the year, and I was just kind of writing to a few people that were really helpful to me. So whether it was they, gave me lessons or just kind of welcomed me aboard when I started. And it was kind of after reading this, or I didn't read the book yet. I heard a podcast with this guy who wrote a book called 365 Thank Yous. So he made it a mission to just thank one person every day, like genuinely thank them for something. And after he got past like kind of the more obvious figures in his life, he would thank the person that, knew his coffee order in the morning every day, and little things like that, people that just kind of make those little cameos in your life that you suddenly, you'll miss when they're gone, but you don't realize how big they are. But anyway, the point was like how much he got out of it. And I got the same thing by sending out these thank you notes. I got people called me up or whether it was a text or just stopped me when the next time they saw me, or I got a thank you card in the mail that summer from somebody else, from as a result. And it was just really surprising to me how much I got out of it. Like just the way it comes back to you is amazing. And like
it's the surprise that makes it worth it. When you're not expecting a gift like a thank you, it's the gift increases in value.
Yeah, and I think in life we often are we're not always thanked for what we do in our daily efforts, and it's nice to get a little recognition sometimes, and just it means a lot, and it's just surprising, like when you focus on the things you're thankful for, what it does for you as well, and in your overall outlook, and then sometimes you even get that kind of mirrored back at you.
I can imagine being that guy on like day number 360. Like, what is the rules of the contest? Did he have to like thank a different person every day?
I don't know, because I didn't read the book. I heard the interview. I should read it. I think it's called 365 Thank Yous.
Thank yous. Because if that's the rule, then it's like that's a challenge. Otherwise, what I'd probably end up doing is just writing out like the same 7 people, like one for each day of the week. After like 60 weeks or 30 weeks or whatever, your mate,
there must have been some kind of rule to that.
Stop thanking me now.
Yeah.
The idea of looking for people to thank is awesome. Like who can I thank next? What am I grateful for? And gratitude.
Yeah, looking for it. I do a little like experiment with my classes. I tell them like, point to something red in the room. Like point to it, and point to something green in the room, and they'll say, I'm like, you notice how that stuff sticks out when you're looking for it? Your mind filters everything else out except for red things, except for green things. And I really think if you're in the spirit of looking for like what's good in your life, you'll see the good things. And if you want to find the things that are bad, you'll see them. They'll stick out just like the colors would. So it is helpful to try to sort of like get in ahead of your brain a little bit before you start going down like negative thinking, which is really easy to find. So that's I guess that exercise of like thinking like, all right, who do I have to thank? What do I have to appreciate? And suddenly you realize like,
that's a useful exercise. If we're talking about, because if we're talking about musicians and people like me and you who produce our own music pretty much independently, how the big question then is, how do I get something? How do I get noticed? How do I get plays? How do I get recognition? How do I level up? How do I influence people? And it's no surprise that, we read the listicle which says, get an influencer and, repurpose your blog content and all these kind of very generic sort of approaches towards something that's actually not generic at all. It's like, for a lot of us, like music and art is super heartfelt. And I think what you've just given me is a good way to answer that question. When people ask me like, how do I level up? This is how we think. When we're scrolling a Twitter feed, we're searching for a green object or we're searching for a red object. Whether we like it or whether we know it or not, we're filtering out stuff that we consider noise, and we can't help it because there's too much coming in, and our brains are really good at filtering. So then the question is, as someone producing the content, I hate that word, but as someone producing the music or the art or the item of inspiration, who is it that stops scrolling when they read what you're about to write? And to really contextualize everything that you do and put into this public space as potentially interrupting the person that you want to interrupt, and them being grateful that you actually had the courage or the time or whatever to show up with this item that ends up benefiting them and sticks out of their feed and sticks out of the noise and stands for something. It has some purpose, it has some value, some depth. That stuff is very difficult to do cheaply and easily. And because we're living in this information age, information is no longer scarce. So no amount of just putting, blog content, quote unquote, or putting out 3 tweets a day, no amount of doing that mindlessly is going to help in the information age, because we're looking for that which is scarce. We always prioritize and hierarchify, is that a word? We always look for that which is scarce. And now that information is completely available everywhere, we're looking for emotional labor. We're looking for something that is obviously not just copy-pasted from somewhere else. We're looking for something which has clearly demonstrates some thought or some higher purpose. And this is the trick, because it applies to absolutely everything, whether it's a blog post or a piece of royalty-free music or a piece of music that is what you would consider a song, a work of art or whatever, or an Ableton Live Pack or whatever it is you make. If you want to call it art, you have to now demonstrate emotional labor like never before. And that's the challenge. How do we do this? I listen to Seth Godin and his work all the time. I'm like, this stuff makes sense to me because it's sober. It's the method in which it's being communicated is unhyped. And whenever I try to help musicians who come at me, usually younger musicians, because now I'm 39, no one's like, there's no more people around like me, like I've kind of outgrown them all. Like I'm always looking for the other people who making things, and because I relate to us. Younger musicians come along. How do I get more Spotify streams? I'm like, Spotify is not a revenue stream. It's a database. It's a public-facing, very sexy database, but you're not going to live off it for a long time. And you shouldn't be trying to win the lottery, because that's just throwing your life away. That's just like throwing your lottery tickets down the toilet. These success stories, these testimonials, the ones that Spotify changed my life or whatever. These people that come along are 1 in a million, and we should be careful. We should definitely be careful about like how much of that stuff we believe. Obviously, it's in the interests of a streaming platform to make it look like 1, 2, 3, go, and you're a star. You notice how like often the marketing slogan involves the word easy. It's easy. Just upload your music. It's easy. And the implication is that you just upload your music, you get 1 million streams, and you retire on a yacht. And we all know deep in our heart that's not true. And now us, I'm starting to like think more like, not an elder, because that makes me sound like my dad, but a mentor is a better idea. Like I feel responsible to speak up in these Facebook threads, and I feel like if I just keep my mouth shut, then it's like this person could waste a lot of time, and they've got something that I don't. They've got another 20 years. So I feel like responsible to not teach, but just talk to people and go, what do you think? What are you aiming for? Are you like, do you want to live fast, die young? That's cool. Like that's your plan. Go for it. But if you're looking to be someone who's still doing music and still kind of making a career out of it, like into your 20s and 30s, then you better look into like Gumroad and getting away from the sort of rock star mythology and finding out what it is that people need. Stop making people want your stuff. Start making stuff people want. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
That's
definitely
something that applies to all artists, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And the thing is to remember, like, is we're people and we like the personal connection, and that's what we relate to, that's why the stuff that's in your life, the artists, the music, the movies, it hit you, and it made you feel like it was for you. And that's something like Seth Godin's always talking about, how, don't make it, if you make it for everybody, you make it for no one.
Correct.
You got to,
exactly.
Who are you making this for? And sometimes, I think you said it too, sometimes it's, you define yourself by figuring out what you're not. I think Seth Godin has that phrase, people like us do this, something like that, and we don't do that. And that's a community. That's where it's so much better to spend your time making those small one-on-one connections, even one person at a time, than it is to put out just trash that hopefully goes viral for everybody. And even if it hits a lot of people, it barely touches them.
And it doesn't last. You need people who are going to, you need people who are going to follow you even after Facebook, crashes and burns or gets, had up by the Senate for whatever they've done next. The tech companies are, if you've got a huge following through a platform, what you're actually looking for is a following that follows you when you leave that platform. So I'm always recommending email lists. I'm not very good at it myself, but I see the potency, and it's definitely a matter of like trying to make, like, what is it? People who miss you when you're gone. You're looking to create a community of people who miss you when you're gone. And Todd was talking about this in the music production podcast episode a few weeks back, the violinist. And he said something which really I think I'm going to hold on to for a long time, which is, I realized I wasn't trying to create an audience. I was trying to create a community. And that flipped a switch for me. Because, I mean, we're taught, like the MailChimp logo is a megaphone. Because you're taught to be the one with the loud hailer standing there going, here's what I've done, and here's why you should listen to it, and this week new, and save 50%. And actually, you shouldn't be the one on the platform. We've got enough people with a voice now. We've got enough people. What we don't have enough of is behind the scenes type people who are connecting the dots and going, oh, you should meet so-and-so. Oh, you should meet so-and-so. You should meet so-and-so. You should meet so-and-so. Because when all the so-and-sos have met all the so-and-sos, they're all going to look at each other and go, how did we meet? Oh, we met through that person. And then it's like, that person has value to society. Now we've got something we can actually trade in. Oh, okay, now I'm going to buy the stuff from their store or whatever. Because I think that's what people are buying. I think they've always bought that, except for, the most superficial of sales. When it comes to art and, things that have been made, it's about you're buying the story. You're buying the story of the artist. You're buying the story of the person or the story behind the work, because it's worth very little without that, which is why every time you see an item at a friend's house, whatever it is, beautiful painting or vase or a record, they go, oh yeah, that was great. I got that at the da-da-da-da-da. And before you know it, we're onto a story. And without the story, it's just a record, So we've got to make the story. We've got to actually be the ones like writing our own stories,
That's really funny, just the way you say that. Like when you go over someone's place and, if the things that have the story are, even if the thing you bought at IKEA is more functional and and everything, it's just like, oh, okay, so it's like at IKEA, whatever. I have this lamp next to me I found in the garbage that it's got this crazy like sculpture of a woman. It might be like... I think I should really actually figure it out by studying a little, but I think it's some kind of like goddess, and the thing weighs like 50 pounds, but I love it. Like it's just, it gives the character, gives the personality, it spices it up a little bit. And the story behind it is so big. Even some of like these synthesizers I have, like this one
I'd
here.
love to know.
Just I got that at an old synth store, the used thing. And the thing that stuck out to me is I was going around the whole day playing different. It was a synthesizer expo actually I was at. It was very small, but I was going around playing all different ones. Yeah, this is cool. This is cool. And I put the headphones on for that one, and 5 minutes later, I took the headphones off and an hour had gone by. Time all of a sudden I got all this story and I was like, whoa, I've been in this little world for a long time. And
totally.
And it's kind of broken. It's got problems with it. But I love that about it. Like it has a story. It's like some of the other ones, while they're great, they're just right off the shelf and I could, if I lost it, I could get the exact same thing again. But it's the things that are kind of irreplaceable that you're like, nah.
That's right, because we've always been drawn to scarcity. It's just part of our DNA or whatever. So in this world, so let's say, for example, today I was working on a song, and I like to do experiments in genre. Okay, I don't like to repeat myself.
Yeah,
I'm actually a Radiohead fan. At the heart of it all, I'm a Radiohead fan. And when I saw what they did, like going from Pablo Honey past Kid A and into the future, I realized that that's had such a huge influence on my work. Like I want to be someone who can not be limited by genre. It's actually very important to me. So today I'm working on a track which I started in 2018, and it's like one of those, it's like Saturday afternoon. I'm like, right, if I do not sit down and figure out how to get the vocal phrasing on this track right today, then I'm going to hurt someone, probably myself, because it's been like 3 years of just like putting it off and trying and giving up. So I nailed it. I'm happy to say, end of the story is I've got this great vocal take for this track Colors now, and I started to give it this psychedelic flavor. So now it's like looking up, how the Stranglers sounded, and like not even like the cock rock type of like 80s type of stuff, like before that, like spring reverbs and all of that. Getting into a different flavor like that. Yeah, anyway, Bit of a tangent there, but I suppose I'm quite inspired at the moment. I've got a new album that's happening at some point. I don't know when, and it's cause for optimism. You know, it's a good moment where you're like, I've been working on this stuff for a long time, and it's gonna happen, and you have that kind of self-confidence. There's so much I'd like to ask you though. You know, like while I have the opportunity, like there is, I'm sure you have stories like from all over the place. From, you know, being a pioneer. I think I first came across your work. I first came across you through my friend Django, who I have to mention by name. Django Flaherty, one of my closest mates, and an absolute wizard. I'm talking like when it comes to audio and sound processing and composition and actually teaching that kind of stuff too. That's someone that I'd like to just connect you with anyway, just because he is... I mean, you guys remind me of each other a lot, actually, what you're doing. So your Gumroad store, you've been publishing via Gumroad, the e-commerce platform, for like at least 5 years now. Is that right?
I think it might have been 2013 or 14 that I started switching over to Gumroad, yeah. Early days. Gumroad,
yeah, exactly, early days. Gumroad makes it like really easy for people who like to focus on music and art to sell stuff. And I've been like incredibly impressed by like how it works and all that. And you must have seen some changes. And like, I just wanted to find out basically how it's working out for you. You know, like you've got the podcast and you've got your Ableton Live Packs and your certified Ableton trainer and all that. I mean, how's it going for you, Brian? How's everything working out?
Well, I tell you what, in the spirit of our conversation about like personal touch and everything, that's one thing I love about Gumroad is they really embody that quite well. I had the creator on the podcast, Sahil.
Did you speak to him? I didn't catch that one.
Yeah, I guess I'll put it in the show notes now that I'm saying it.
Oh, wait, I did. He talked about painting, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember now. He talked about painting. He was like, yeah, you think it's brown, but it's actually green and yellow. But when you look at it up close, I remember that. I listened to that like a year ago or something.
Yeah, he was excellent to talk to. He's a creator. Yeah. He's an artist himself.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So he left me one thing he articulated really nicely for me that has stuck with me is just this concept of if you are producing a lot of stuff, making a lot, and I'm sure you could relate to this actually because you're very prolific with your work. When you have 10 songs in the works, you're going to do like 10 this month or whatever you're going to do. You have so much room to experiment and try things out and get a little wild with it. But if you're only doing like one thing, one track every 3 months, it just becomes too precious. And that's paralyzing. It's almost impossible to even do anything because you don't want to ruin it because it's your only shot. So
this is the big one. You put the pressure on yourself.
But when you've got all like smaller, well, I don't know if it's smaller, but just when you're constantly going through the process of creating something, it just really it takes you go through the process over and over again, and you get better at the process, and that sort of becomes the goal, and you can have fun with it. And
exactly.
I really enjoyed talking to him on that level. But they're as a company, they're so supportive of the creators, and they're really listening, and they're coming to it from the perspective of a creator. He had a great blog post, or I guess you could call it a blog post essay he kind of wrote about like how he failed to make his $1 billion company, but that was like the best thing that happened to him with Gumroad. Like initially thought like that's what you do, you get like investors, but he talks about how much better it worked out not doing that, and how it's had a real impact on people. Like people are using Gumroad to support themselves with what they love to do.
Totally. Okay, so what we're talking about now, we touched on earlier before we started recording, which is the value of this type of dialogue we're having now. I don't know, Gumroad's competitors, probably Shopify.
Patreon. It's probably
Patreon, Shopify, that kind of thing. And I don't know if people are like, okay, Patreon's also creator friendly because it's Jack Conte is a known musician. But I don't know if anyone's having these types of conversations about Shopify. You see, so Shopify may have a market valuation of $1 billion or whatever. But what I'm starting to see is that we're looking for what is scarce. And when we're talking about digital currency and we're talking about, statements and quarterly reports and all that, there doesn't seem to be a shortage of money in the world, especially in the tech sector where it's like $1 billion is nothing. What's not being measured is loyalty, and there's no column on the spreadsheet for actual impact, like the type of there's no humanity, if you want to call it that, is not being measured. In the same way, we have an analog signal and we chop it up into tiny chunks and we record that as a digital signal, which is a very, very convincing approximation of the real thing. It can't be the real thing because it is a simulation of it. And we see the same thing with our digital identities. We see our Facebook profiles. I was shocked, I've been shocked many times over the years at how closely we identify with our Facebook profiles. When I went into Facebook thinking, this is a big joke, everyone's going to take the piss, I gave myself fake names. And after a while, people started asking me, why do you call yourself Jovan Bartmann as a joke and whatever, And then I started to realize, holy crap, people are actually really buying into this. And it's hit me. And now I see the gravity of it. It's kind of gone out of control. We're confusing the map with the territory. And this is the symptom of our age. We have to try and find the kind of, the courage to disengage. I'm not saying unplug, and I'm not a Luddite. I believe in using technology and using it as a tool, but I also believe in putting it down when we're done, because that's all it should be. We shouldn't be as closely engaged with our online selves, and we shouldn't be, checking our phones while people are trying to have a conversation with us. And these are behaviors that we've got to still learn to adapt to, because it's only been 20, 30 years of internet. I don't have kids, but I don't want to teach my kids to behave the way I've been behaving just by osmosis for the last 15 years. We can do better, is what I'm saying. We can do better. And I'm trying to put some of this thinking into my blog on Pravda, and I'm trying to put it into my songwriting and have a sense of optimism about what happens after we realize that this is true, and that you can't confuse the map for the terrain, and that there is a reality that the tech companies are trying as hard as they can, and business, and it takes whatever form, over time, but business is always going to try and own a chunk of culture. But the thing is, it's then going to water it down, and it's going to make it more convenient, and that convenience is killing culture. Our ability to have 65 million songs for $10 a month, it enables very few greatly, and basically squashes the rest, because no one listens to what's at the bottom of the database. So I guess I'm trying to put across in a very neutral tone here, without getting worked up about it, is we've got to take responsibility for what we pay attention to. We've got to take responsibility for where we get our music. We've got to take responsibility for supporting local, whatever form that might be, food, arts, clothing, whatever. It's top heavy. Let's bring it back down to a state of harmony,
Yeah.
I'm about to pivot once again. So you mentioned earlier I've got got royalty-free music. And this is my, it's where I get to experiment. So every month I put out 10 new songs, and I try to link them, in some way. So this week it's like I'm copying podcast music intros. So I'm finding popular podcasts and trying to imitate their intros and putting my own spin on it. But I've also realized that the sales for this type of stuff has gone off a cliff. No one's really interested in buying one track when you can, for the same amount of money, buy a subscription, to Inverter or Epidemic Sound or whatever, because we've got one track. It's very kind of democratic on the surface, but one track equals one track in a system where you're not measuring humanity, where you're not measuring culture, where there's no column on the spreadsheet for the depth of engagement. So it's the short term versus the long term. In the short term, I think the very convenient will win. And I think in the long term, we're going to return to a state of I miss the good old days when, you could break the rules in music. And I miss the good old days when people innovated in music. Yeah. And that's part of my mission, is to convey music, which sounds human and sounds like it's been labored over and sounds like it's got some actual like fun in it and doesn't just sound like corporate soulless crap, you know.
Yeah, well, that's like the stuff that's going to be real hard for AI to create.
Yeah, that's it. It's all about staying a step ahead of the AI. Exactly.
Well, I think the secret is a lot of the stuff you're saying. It's the story, it's the personality, it's the kind of weird humorous turns and the things that you just kind of can't program. And
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm not too concerned that I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little blip where AI does its thing and maybe like has a little .com era boom type thing, you know. But I think really quickly people will just start to say like, yeah, but you know, we miss like that humanity, that touch, that thing, you know, that thing that John did in his track, that little weird thing, that little change. That was like,
humans are looking for human work, you know. It's within us. Yeah.
I mean, like,
so now I've got to be like,
computer is never going to have my dog barking in the background of my guitar track. That might just be like just a little charm that like makes it human, that you can kind of hear my dog like in the background of that like classical guitar part, you know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 10 works for chamber, classical guitar, and dog. I make royalty-free music, and I release it quite openly. Like most of it's free to download. I just wanted to play a piece of what I would consider something quirky, which combines instrumental singing like baraba and ukulele, and also this unique kind of click sound that we have in the local languages here in South Africa called Xhosa. So I've used all three of these together to create quite a unique sound. And this album has actually been picked up by a dude who's putting a TV show together for HBO, Tom Michelson. So I'm quite stoked to be working with people on that level and showcasing some of the weird sort of African influence stuff that I've done. Take a listen to this track. It's I don't even know what it's called, but it doesn't really matter. Give it a listen.
I wanted to ask you, you just like kind of casually said like, I'm doing 10 songs this month, which I think to so many people doing music is 10 songs is, I mean, even for me, like I've been doing this for quite a long time, most of my life now. And that's really daunting. I wanted to ask you like, how do you get through it so fast? There must be some things you're doing that prevent you from getting caught up and maybe like time killers or repetitive tasks you must have simplified in some way. I'm just curious if you had any pointers on how to, and even just like writer's block and the self-doubt.
Yeah. All that stuff is, now, to me, that's stuff that I remember. I've been, and the short answer to your question, how do you do it so quickly, is it's the habit that I'm already in. And it's taken a while to get in the habit. And the habit is the process of removing barriers and removing obstacles. So I've taught myself Reaper. I'm very impressed at Ableton 11, by the way. I think that they've really listened to their users. Now that I'm on Reaper and I realize the power of customizability and the flexibility of Reaper with programming keyboard shortcuts and all of that, I've got a list of things in front of me now, and I've got even more in my head. And at this stage in my production, because I'm so busy all the time, sitting down for maybe 3-4 hours every day. No, realistically more like 2 if you average it out over the week. 2 hours a day, every day of just solid composition. I realized very quickly what I need to create a keyboard shortcut for, and I do that. So now tomorrow, it's not even a matter of going, oh, what do I do? It's just literally like an involuntary muscle movement, like create new track, route it, blah, blah, blah. So that's one of the things, is removing the barriers takes time, and it takes like repetition. You have to really want to do this. Exactly, and and not to put it off. So another trick would be if you hit a wall, you're going to hit it again. So you can either climb over it now, or you can work out, the best way to get rid of it completely, so that tomorrow when you come the same way, you don't have to climb over it again. So every time I hit a wall, I stop what I'm doing, I Google the problem, and then if necessary, make a note or create a keyboard shortcut. I've got these little labels that I use, and I stick them right here in front of me. Alt-T, tempo envelope. Okay, I learned that yesterday, and now it's no longer a barrier. So I've just shaved 5 minutes off my day tomorrow, and every time I would have hit that wall in future. So I've actually just saved myself 10 years of time. So one of the things that you can do is literally just, the workflow shouldn't be about the track all the time. You shouldn't be like, how am I going to finish this track? It's like Michelangelo, that whole thing of like, I just removed the marble that wasn't part of David. It's literally like that. Like, I just got everything out of the way, and the natural byproduct of that was like, I pull out my MIDI keyboard, program a little beat. Next thing I know, it's quantized. Then I've duplicated it, and I've got a 2-minute arrangement. And now it's time to move on to the bass. Same thing, exactly the same approach. And if there's one moment in this entire process of creating a track from scratch, like layering, forming the skeleton, forming the scaffolding, so deciding this is going to be a 2-minute track with an AAB section and then a 1-bar break and then another AB. I've worked that out in my mind. Now I've got to layer it all. If at any point in that whole process I hit a wall, I stop and I go, right, time to Google this, make a note, make a keyboard shortcut, go. And the byproduct of that is being able to open a new Reaper session, and in one day you can lay down the scaffolding for like 5 tracks. The next day you can lay down the scaffolding for 5 tracks. And then it's the fun part of like, now that your core composition is out of the way, you can start layering and getting stuck into like instrument choices and patches. I've got a spreadsheet which is called Patches, and it's all of the stuff that I find interesting or useful for all types of composition. So I'm currently actually scoring a feature film, which is the first time I'm doing this. It's great. Nice. And along the way, I've been working out how does this sounds a little bit like a whatever dystopian Atticus Ross type soundtrack. This one sounds a bit more like Westworld. This one sounds a bit more, and I make notes of the patches with their paths. So it might be like reactor carbon 89 sounds good for the type of scene where Mad Max, it's a death scene in Mad Max. That reminds me of that. And I actually I'll create a tag like Mad Max. And so that I know that in future, if I'm trying to recall the scene, then I can find it easily. So I've created all these habits around the work that really streamline the workflow. And then the actual composition is really, it's no problem at all, it takes no time. That's the factory approach, the treadmill.
Well, I think you need to have a little bit of that, especially if you want to be as productive as you're being and get a lot of work done in a timely fashion. And I'm a big believer in like quantity leads to quality.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on your blog. Yeah.
But so when you're working on a track, you're also working on the process, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
really.
That's right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Just as a creative decision in your song is really important, you will also realize a more like mechanical change or technical process-oriented change that you can make as well, and you hold those in the same kind of level of priority.
Yes, and within context. So everything I've been mentioning now, because you asked a question a few minutes ago, how do you work so fast? I should just say that all of this stuff about the factory approach, the industrial kind of cranking out music approach, this is all within the context of what I'm trying to do with royalty-free music, which is all instrumental, and it's all designed as backing music, and it's all designed to be very quick. And the purpose of it for me is to familiarize myself with a broad range of genres and have all of the tools I need to create each one at my fingertips at a given moment's notice. Call that the one strategy. Then I've got the stuff that I really feel and my heart goes into, and that's my band Pravda. And I've been writing this stuff for 10 years sometimes. I'm still producing tracks that I've been working on for years, and it's exactly the opposite. I labor over every tiny little thing. There is absolutely no copy-pasting. There's copy-pasting of certain things, but I don't look at it as, I've got to get through this. I would rather not put it out if it's not ready. And so as a result, like today, when you have these breakthroughs, when you're like, I nailed the vocal phrasing, you feel like you've earned it. Because I've been singing in my car for the last 3 weeks trying to get this part right. So when you turn the record on and you go for it, you're not trying to make something out of nothing. You've done the work. And I hope that comes through in the music and the songwriting. And that piece that I sent to you that we got connected on, Love is Calling, the lyrics of that song are about when I was missing my now wife. We'd been together for 2 years. I'd been teaching in English. We were doing long distance, and I was in Indonesia on Lombok Island, which is just east of Bali. And I'd been traveling on my own, cycling down through Vietnam on a bicycle with a violin taped up to the back of the violin. So I've done like a lot of soul searching through Cambodia and all this. And now I'm like on this island, and every day is the same. I'm just like paddling around in the water and eating nasi goreng. And I realized something for the first time in my life, which is that I miss this person more than I've ever missed anyone in my life. And I really had to come home. And I was about to come home, and I just had this change. And when I came home, that was it. Immediately I was like, this is my wife, And that was 8 years ago now, yeah. And so that's what that song's about. It's called Love is Calling. It's just about how it's just about really missing someone you love. And from a distance, it feels like your heart's just like reaching out across the oceans. So that's the type of stuff, that type of songwriting. This factory approach has no place in that. That's like craft work. That's like the detail. That's like this, the Swiss watchmaker approach. And I think that's all I do. I just do those two extremes. Right. I've got the music that's just cranked out and put online almost entirely for free. And then you get the stuff that takes 10 years to produce. And I don't really do anything in the middle. I haven't yet. I'm sure when, if professional stuff picks up, and people are asking me for stuff on a deadline, I'll manage to find a balance where I can feel it, but also get it done in 2 weeks. That's kind of what I'm aiming for now, is I guess to fill that middle gap and have a bit more value in that way, of someone who can actually make someone feel something, but also on a deadline. But you have to really have experienced both ends of that spectrum in order to be able to deliver that middle ground. And the middle ground is what they want. The middle ground is they want like whatever, brand, commercial, music composition, whatever. I haven't done a lot of it, but I gather that what they want is something that moves the audience, but is also broad appeal, which is a really tough balancing act. So thankfully, I've done a little bit of the work on both ends of that spectrum, and hopefully I can deliver,
Yeah, okay, so you have like your craft, which is the more, I guess, like the stuff, like the public stuff, and then you have your art, which is the stuff you do for the band. But I guess obviously the stuff you learn in the craft along the way then is just
that's it. Exactly.
In your toolbox now for the art.
Exactly, yeah. So it lowers the barrier to your magnus opus, whatever that is. Now I can do something now. It allows you to get being familiar. This is something that I think everyone who does a craft or an art can benefit from, is being familiar with the technical production aspect is pretty much the greatest tool you have, because what we want here is a type of muscle memory between your heart, what it is you're trying to bring to the world, and the actual finishing of the project. Like you have when you play piano or whatever, you watch a musician play really, really well, you know that they're not calculating anything because their brain is switched off. the goal of all this practice is to literally be able to take the passion, the feeling of the music directly from that place of raw emotion and into the muscles. And so the muscles are limber because you've done your 10,000 hours of practice or whatever. And all of that practice then enables you to bypass the brain, to bypass the thinking mind. I think that is a lot of the goal of practicing an instrument, to bypass your cognitive sort of the fact that your mind is always switched on. We want to switch our minds off, and that's why we listen to music, and that's why we get moved by it. But you can't do that until you've done your technical stuff. And it's the same even with a computer. You know, I know that you at Berkeley, they're starting to treat a computer like an instrument, which I think is great. What we're trying to do here is to bypass the idea that we're now, quote unquote, working on a computer, and to be able to pour ourselves into the work. And the only equivalent I can think of from muscle memory is literally just having that list of keyboard bindings, keyboard shortcuts pre-worked out, and having your templates ready to just drag and drop, and having everything ready to go. That's the equivalent of muscle memory, is when your fingers are ready to go. It's good librarianship. And I encourage musicians to spend, I suppose, more time doing that, all that setup work, so that when the inspiration strikes, you're able to take it down and to really like capture it as what you're feeling without your brain getting in the way, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that the setup, the pre-work is huge.
Yeah.
You know, I've got pretty much, I got my interface here. Everything is connected more or less. Mm-hmm. And it's all labeled inside my DAW. When I look at my inputs, it says 1 is my Heil mic right here / guitar input, which I can alternate between. And it says that. It's like every single input, 7 and 8 drum overheads. So that, I mean, in the past, I've spent lots of time where every single time I make something, it's like, all right, which one is that one again? And like you start looking through each one, you're playing the thing, and you're trying to find. By then, I don't even want to make music anymore. You know?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you should try and do it with your eyes closed. Exactly. Have you got a kit there, drum kit somewhere there?
Yes, there is one.
Ah, envy. You can see it in my space. There's no size. There's no space.
See if I can. I might have to get out of the way here.
Tour, definitely.
All right.
Oh, that is kick-ass. You got the drums in the corner.
Let's see. Can you see that?
Got a little lava lamp there.
They're kind of, see,
that's cool.
I'll kill some of the romance. You'll see the washing machine back there, too. Trying to get out of the way here.
That's all good, man. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. The type of space that you're in right now, that is what I'm working for. And not even just the gear and stuff, but just the depth of the room and the quiet of it. That's like all of my effort. I wanna have a piano that I can play while my family is sleeping. You know, like that's my dream. So great stuff, man. Yeah, well, getting there.
I mean, before we started, you know, I like what you've got going too. That you've got your space, you've got your things around you, and even you were talking about some of the gear you have, like from the '90s guitar effects pedals back there.
Yeah, I'll zoom in on that. Wait, let me grab the camera here.
I like how you have kind of like put your tools and your weapons out ready to go, so that you know you're going to be messing with this stuff for whatever it is you're working on. You were mentioning like kind of drone, like soundtrack type stuff.
Yeah, so it won't, like I mentioned, it won't actually pick up on the podcast, but I'm recording this, so I'll send you this after. Give this a listen. I mentioned I've been messing around with a Korg X Station, a little mini synth keyboard, into my Boss GT6, which is a guitar pedal from like the 90s. It's a multi-effects pedal. So this is the kind of the more dry sound of just the synth. Give it a listen. It's got a spacey kind of underwater kind of feel. Yeah, it's very mellow. I consider that good for underscore. So if you're scoring a film or whatever, that's great. But running it through the distortion pedal, what I found then is you get this layer of crunch, and I recognize it as being like the sound of modern film score, like by something by Atticus Ross. I recently watched The Book of Eli, which is this dystopian sound. So give this a listen. It's a similar thing with this run through the guitar effects pedal, and it's got this lovely like distorted texture. Give it a listen. That's not such a nice one. So I stay here at night times. I sit here and I just tweak these knobs and figure out how to make it sound better. And I get into the menus. I mean, it's a real rabbit hole. And I didn't think it. These two, like I mentioned, are my two least used pieces of gear. They were both getting dusty, so I decided to like introduce them to each other. And now I've got this new angle of approach, which is this drone-based film score type of stuff, which I'm definitely going to be using, probably in the work that I'm working on at the moment. I don't like having stuff that I'm not using all the time, you know. I don't like stuff getting dusty in the corner. So I mean, I can do. What I'll do there is I'll actually just do a little demo of the sounds, and I'll send that to you after.
Nice.
Very cool. Grungy, gritty type of distortion, a lot of reverb, yeah.
It's just nice how you've got like this little palette of things that you can work on. Yeah. And then you can really go deep with it. You can explore it and you can learn it and understand it on a new level.
Yeah. Use what you got, use the tools that you got at the moment. I think one of my major skills besides music is space maintenance, because this room is about 6 by 6 feet and it's a cube kind of, and I've got stuff hanging from the ceiling, and I don't think there's a more optimal way to set this room up. And like I said, I'm working towards having a place which I can fit a piano in. That'd be great,
Right.
I was playing the piano at my friend's house today. Again, it's so different to a keyboard, it's less forgiving. Like keyboard sounds are like tweaked to sound like nice most of the time, and they come out of monitor speakers and there's a bit of color involved. But pianos are just like blank, 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 like hard in your face, like no forgiveness. And there's a rawness to it that I miss. I used to play piano all the time in school. And anyway, very, very useful compositional tool, definitely. Being on a piano out of your studio, being on a piano like in a different room, that's where you're going to give birth to like, a good 80% of your ideas. And then you come back into the room, and jot it down. The computer's just like a sketch pad, it's just a big sophisticated notepad. It doesn't produce ideas.
I love getting a new scenery, change of venue, like to play in different places, and sometimes different instrument, or just I love like the space I have, and to work down here, it's great. I love it. It's home, but it's fun to take yourself out of the water, and, see if you can be a fish elsewhere too, and see what kind of fish you are.
That's good.
Well, I've been playing some music with a couple of buddies of mine since the summer. We've been jamming, and
cool.
We alternate from playing here and playing at the drummer's house, my friend Chris. And when I go there, I don't bring my amp. I don't bring a pedal. I just plug my guitar into whatever he's got, going there. And it's great. And I don't even fuss with the amp. I don't even touch it. I just kind of, whatever it is, purposely. Maybe if it's too loud, I'll turn it down. But I guess as a guitarist, I'm probably more likely to turn it up.
I was going to say, you're more cultured than 90% of us guitarists.
Probably lying to you guys right now. But it just changes the way I play. Instead of me having my rig where I'm used to it and I know the sound and everything, to have something else and then say, all right, this is what I'm going to work with. I'm going to figure this out. Is
that's where
a great challenge and limitation. And I find more and more that the real obstacle for me is too many choices.
Totally, dude. Totally. Modern choice theory, one of the recent Kimbo episodes, Seth Godin's podcast. Just listen to that. It's like we're bombarded. It's fatigue. It's a type of fatigue that we experience. And the thing is, the choice A or choice B, the difference is we haven't weighed in the lack of consequence into the decision. And we're not actively looking at these decisions between 50 different types of metal tones in Guitar Rig 6. They're all wonderful, but I don't have a minute of my life to spend scrolling through them to find the perfect one because I've been inundated with marketing messages that, have sent me on this mythical quest for tone. It's not worth my time anymore. What I'm looking for is a metal patch. And I very much doubt that anyone whose opinion matters is going to come along and go, you really should have chosen a different metal patch. People are stuck in that way of thinking, and they're especially in metal. Because metal is about. So metal's a bad example, but people who see fault in, I don't know. It's not even worth talking about the haters, But what I mean is there is way too much importance being placed on finding the exact right perfect thing. What we got to do is work with what we got more often. Take your guitar, plug it in, see what kind of stuff you can get out of it. That's art. It's like John Lennon said, give me a tuba, I'll get you something out of it. That's what it means to be an artist. That's what it means to be an artist. It means to be standing in a little chalk circle that's 3 feet wide and being told to sing and dance. That's what it means to be an artist. We have luxuries. I mean, look at us. Most of the people around me here in South Africa would consider this like a luxurious studio, because I've got 4 MIDI controllers. And yet still there's music coming out of the townships that is hitting the charts in Europe and stuff because something else is going on that has very little to do with your access to, the exact right sample packs and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't want to get on a high horse too much. I'm actually just more interested in are you a gigging musician? Have you played out and stuff in the last year much? How's that been going for you?
I haven't played out in the last year at all. No, it's not really happening yet.
It's not happening, yeah.
Not really. They're starting to I've heard some people making plans over the summer. It's really not much. And what there is kind of, doing the best with what we can do. But I have been able to play with 2 of my friends on a regular basis, which has been really nice. And, like we said, we were, funny you mentioned all this. We were recording guitars the other night, and we have 2 amps set up. They're both mic'd. There's a room mic, and we recorded it, and we're like, I don't know. And we moved the mic, and we got it sound a little better, but then we took out a amplitude just for the fun of it, and start at the default patch was like, it sounds pretty cool. Then we started going through the presets, and after 5 presets, 25 presets, we were just like, I don't even know anymore. Well, I probably would have just quit, honestly, if my friend wasn't here. I think I just got that feeling of this is too much. I can't even handle this right now. And
that's right,
it's getting late at night. It's just enough. So we just went back to what we had already mic'd up. We said, look, we spent the time miking this up. We can just pull up Amplitude anytime we want. I love it. I think Amplitude's great. But it was just funny how, you said, we were getting such minimal gains, and to the point where we couldn't tell what we were A-Bing and everything. I was secretly what do you think of this one? I'm not telling you which one it is. You tell me. And we were I mean, so we wound up just working with that, and it was much better to just say, let's work with what we're set up, and we can figure it out if we need to later.
Yeah, and also just have fun, like
Yes.
playing a guitar beats being on a screen like 10 days of the week.
Let's
You know,
do the
so-
fun part and enjoy.
Yeah, do the
get
fun
that,
part. Yeah.
You know.
Remove the barriers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So yeah, there's no gigging. Hopefully soon. I definitely miss that, but I don't do that probably as much as I used to either. In general,
Right. Yeah.
there was a time period where I was willing to go out. I'm on Long Island and about an hour from like Brooklyn and Manhattan, where there's sometimes some stuff going on. I was going out on Tuesday nights, coming home at 2:30 in the morning and getting up for work a few hours later, and
going out on Tuesday nights and coming home on Saturday mornings.
well, it was like, I had a good time, and a lot of that I was doing by myself too. But
yeah.
It wasn't worth it all the time. I've done mini tours. We've gone like down the East Coast of the United States, and some of the most fun times I've ever had. But also, I realized like I don't want to. We did it for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I don't want to do this for 3 months.
That's right, man. It's like becomes like stepping. I have no experience in like being a touring musician, but I gather that it becomes like stepping onto a stage, becomes like stepping into an office, and that's where the mythology comes in. You know, we can't have a crowd of people thinking this guy's just stepping into an office. So that's where like the need for the hype comes in, and that's showbiz, man. You know, like no one's gonna change that. But as a musician, we want to look at that with a bit more of a realistic mindset, because the image that's being painted for younger musicians is that it's like 100% fun, 100% big bucks all the time, no consequences, and it's just not true, you know. But for short stints, that's something I would have enjoyed to do. Is like, just travel around and play music for people. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we did. I think at most 2 weeks, and
maybe like that.
We had a great time, crammed it in the car, and we actually had it so we could drive a car. And then we had a minivan at one point, but it was great fun. You're hanging out with your friends, and when it's good, it's good. But if you're at a bar or a club every night, so like it's that environment, and there's the risk. You find yourself having a drink all the time, even if you're not a big drinker, and you're just around that kind of temptation, and you're not getting enough sleep. You're eating garbage half the time, and to do that for a prolonged period of time, you can't have a dog. You can't have a relationship.
Exactly.
It helped me realize what I'm not and what I don't want to be, and because there was a long time where like I thought that's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be in a band and tour and just see the world that way, because there's no denying it's fun, but there's the other side of it too. And I never really felt like playing was going to the office. Like that was always exciting. That was the fun part. But knowing that we had like 4 hours to drive the next day, and we're gonna sleep on someone's floor tonight.
And probably just have like leftover McDonald's for breakfast or whatever. Like
it's just totally. I loved it, but in small doses.
Exactly, in small doses. But what it comes down to is like community. Like you have had times with those friends of yours now that you guys will never forget.
Oh yeah.
It's building these bridges, and that's kind of what has been taken away from us in this last year. I'm at a point now where I'm really like kind of craving a type of community. I was at my friend's house today. We're going to organize a little house concert at her house. And it's this is the motivation that you mentioned that the podcast earlier that I run. I started reaching out to other music composers whose work impressed me primarily. And I started wanting them to have an opportunity to show off their work. So so it's called How I Make Music. It took me a year. So the first year of the show, every week I was basically just picking apart my own songs and talking about my own stuff in a creatively edited way with as much music playback as possible. And then after 58 of those episodes, I pivoted and I started to call up these other people and say, hey man, I see that you've like scored this audio drama, and it's all audio drama composers. That's the niche, fiction podcast composers. And I would say, do you want to talk on the show? And then explaining the process to them, how it's like what we're doing now is an interview, you and me, Brian. But actually what I took cues from the format of Song Exploder, which is a podcast, which is like self-hosted. The actual interviewer you don't hear their voice. So I edited myself out completely, and that left like big gaps in between the nuggets of good stuff, the good sound bites from their audio. And so I started to use the music that they'd made to fill those gaps. And now it's kind of like, it's becoming this, the format of the show is starting to sound like an audio drama. In other words, there's a lot of reverb, there's a lot of sound effects, and I use the separate stems from their tracks. So they submit a composition to me, and then I use the separate stems from their tracks to underscore either what they're saying. So like while they're talking about the synth, I'm playing the synth, or I use it in a dramatic way. So if they're telling a story about something that happened, their car broke down or something, I could use parts of the music they've sent me, or other music, or music that I've written, or whatever it takes. The goal of the show is to create this kind of immersive experience, which is now starting to become psychedelic. Like I've started screwing around with Valhalla Frequency Echo, you know, that free plugin by Valhalla. It's incredible. It's really good. So I've got some new toys now I'm going to start messing with people's voices. So instead of just a straight to like normal dialogue, or in this case, a normal sort of monologue, you're going to hear their voices get pitched, shifted and warped and stretched. And I want the average person who takes a chance and listens to the show going forward to be like, what the hell is this? And it almost doesn't matter what the person's saying, because it's just this really riveting, attention retaining audio, you know? I think that's the best use of the podcast medium today, like as we have it, is to create these immersive soundscapes that people can really like escape, even if they're doing the dishes or whatever, you know? I never wanted to make an interview style podcast. It always had to be about something that sounded like really out of the box. And it's fun, man. It's really, really fun. Like every time I feel down because I've got to schedule an interview and I've got to do some admin around this, then I get the guy, or it's usually a guy, sometimes a girl, sometimes neither. I get them on the show and I talk to them like we're talking now. And after an hour, I'm like, I leave the room, I'm like, yes. And my wife's like, you just talked to another contributor. I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm not alone. There's another dude somewhere in Scotland who's sitting in his room 9 hours a day, a room the size of mine, and he's just going for it. He's working on audio drama, he's producing music, he's practicing, he's getting his chops up. There are people like me, and that feeling is what we're all craving right now. And I want to give generously, like, to these people. That's what this is about for me. It's like, I'm not at all interested in being on a podium and here's my podcast. That's why I take my voice out of the show. I want what they say to be shown to other people, because it's so awesome, man. People who do cool independent shit are so awesome. And people who like challenge this cookie cutter corporate approach towards entertainment and podcasts are awesome. And people doing weird stuff are awesome. And I just find it so like hard to like get that through to people, you know, like just scroll past the first 3 links on Google, like look for the stuff at the bottom of the barrel, you know, like go crate digging for cool shit. Like don't just do what everyone else is doing, you know? And so that's part of the mission that I'm on, is like, yeah. So and it's a lot of work, and I don't earn anything for it. But what I do learn is how to make some really whack out there audio. The podcast I run, How I Make Music, I interview other musicians, like for audio drama, composers mainly, and then I edit myself out of the discussion, and so it sounds like the contributor talking about their work, and I color it up with like a sound effects and some of the musical parts that they've written. So it's this kind of immersive listening experience. What you're going to hear now is a guy called Ben Waldmetz, who's a composer from Texas, and he's talking about his own work with a spaghetti western type show. And I've added some like sound effects of horses running and gunshots and stuff. Give it a listen.
This track also includes a lot of instruments that you might not expect to hear in a spaghetti western, really anachronistic sounds. A cowboy would be shocked to hear an arpeggiated synthesizer. You're supposed to hear that and immediately be thinking like grainy film quality, like, I don't want to say cheesy, but maybe over-the-top cowboy action, you know. Blood, 6 shooters, bullets whizzing everywhere, horses going crazy, things like that. I wanted to move beyond those typical tropes and push it into some weirder direction.
That's basically the idea behind How I Make Music, the podcast, is to create this kind of experience, this kind of immersive, dramatic listening, cinematic listening experience out of an interview using music and sound effects. Basically, that's what it comes down to. So if you like that kind of stuff, go check out the show How I Make Music. Maybe I'll be able to, put it to use someday in other ways. But for now, I'm just happy like being in contact with these people. Like it's not about stars. I mean, I was amazed. You got Jordan from Dream Theater on your show a couple of weeks ago, and that's like, whoa, dude, I'm going to be on the same podcast as the guy from Dream Theater, and that's like a real notch in my belt. And at the same time, that to me is worth less than the quality of what Jordan Rudess says on his show, which I found quite intriguing, by the way. Like, you guys are also humble, like even just chatting to you now, you're like just these ordinary cool people, and that's who I want to surround myself with, not like social climbers and influencers. I want to surround myself with people like us, who do this. So yeah, there you go, Seth Godin in action.
Well, that's like kind of what when I've talked to Jordan Rudess about just everything he's doing, and I left, and I think after we hit stop, I said to him, I was like, I love that you're so enthusiastic, like you're still excited, like you are a master, virtuoso, and you're still fascinated by music, and you still love it, and you just feel that from him. And I'm getting that from you too. When you're talking about doing this podcast, you're excited. It comes right through, and I think that's something you're getting through talking to the people. And like you, this podcast is its own reward. If it never got published, I'd still love doing it, just to talk to people and hear what they're doing and learn from them. And learn about myself through doing it. I think I can really hear like how much fun you're having on the podcast, on the other end. And when I first started listening to it, I almost wasn't sure if I had the right show because I didn't hear you. I was waiting for like, where's John Bartmann? But I never got that. And it kind of occurred to me too, like that it's really cool of your guests as well. Like they put a lot of work into it. They read like almost like the spots and the intros for you.
That's right. Yeah,
and talk about stuff. So, and I can imagine too, just setting that up and helping them through that is also a lot of work for you. Where it would probably be a lot easier to just say it yourself, but you've kind of decided to go that route where you want to immerse the audience in their world, so they are the narrator of the episode. And I think that's really cool.
It's a little bit awkward sometimes because, for example, there were 2 guys I spoke to, and one of them has a rather, he's got a biggish name in the industry, and I chatted to him because he had worked on one of the audio dramas, which is called The Oyster, and it's this really psychedelic, it's really well done. And so I won't mention their names or anything, but like I'll publish the episode at some point. And the first thing the guy, because it's a double episode, it's 2 contributors, which is unusual. Usually it's just one, complicates things. And so one of the guys is like, you mind if I smoke? And he lights up a joint. And it's like, now we're beginning the interview. And next thing you know, I've been talking to these guys for an hour they're both like cooked, but they're real pros. But they're like having a little fun with me because I'm just this like complete random who's taken an interest in their niche little art project or whatever. And then like it comes to the end of the show, I'm like, okay, guys, now I've got this guy who's like produced Kesha's records, like doing the housekeeping on my show. I'm like, maybe I should just like change the format a bit on this one. But they managed to get through it, and I'm sure it's going to sound fine. And it's not a hard and fast rule either, like if it comes down to it, I'll interrupt and explain. But I try and avoid basically saying anything because I want the experience to be like, for the listener to be immersive. I want the person whose goods we're looking at, and the person who the light is being shined on. I'm very good at shining a light on other people, I think. I think that's my skill.
Yeah, it's kind of like this meta idea where you've got this podcast about audio dramas that itself is an audio drama.
Yeah, the format should reflect that, because that to me is good art. I mean, I don't speak about myself, but like in art, what I perceive as good art is where the form matches the content. And by that I mean, if the story is, for example, the film Memento, the reason that was a mind-blowing critical success was because the form matched the content. It's a story about a guy who can't create new memories, and it's been edited in reverse so that you are constantly...
You don't have the memory either.
That's it, yeah. And that, like you mentioned, is the meta. You don't have the memory either. You got it. That's the meta narrative that to me defines like the best art. You know what I mean? Without being too like self-referential. Like, anyway, that's a whole philosophical rabbit hole. But yeah, thanks for picking up on that. I do put a lot of heart into how I make music. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's and it's kind of like just reminded me like how much podcasting has done for storytelling, and because it's almost like these old-timey radio shows that now have this like new avenue that they sort of didn't have for a while, and people are really doing cool stuff. Like there's been a lot of like big name shows that kind of dabble in this too. With some of the true crime podcasts that have happened have an element of this, but there's also stuff like from the people you're talking to that is like really deep into it, where it's a sound is being used to tell the story.
Yeah. So fiction podcasting is one of the most warm-hearted and open and supportive communities that I've ever encountered on the web. There's a Facebook group called Audio Drama Hub. If anyone listening to this is interested in getting into audio drama, people are just competing to give you the absolute best advice, and no one has any tolerance for trolling, and it's just really generous. And then there's the Twitter hashtag Audio Drama Sunday, where there's usually some good stuff going on. But the most important thing, if you're into audio drama or you want to find out about how to make a fiction podcast, storytelling podcast, look up the Fiction Podcast Weekly newsletter. It's put together by Lindsay and Sarah, who are two very generous supporters and creators of audio drama. And every Friday I sit there and I just read through what's going on in the world of audio drama, and its jobs and opportunities and people to support and news you should know about and stuff that's happening. It's just, it's a very generously curated list, like kind of best of type of thing. So get into it like that. You're absolutely more than welcome to get in touch with me. I love connecting with people about audio drama and storytelling and helping make that better. Whether it's like improving the quality of your recordings, or if you're working with like a full cast, if you're working with other people, your friends or whatever, how to schedule recording times remotely. And then if you're talking about creating an immersive soundscape or whatever, like where to source good sound effects, free ones, paid ones, how to get good music, how to time your music so that narratively it like matches, that your score matches the dialogue. There's just tons of stuff I can help with, and I want to, One of the works that I've been busy with is called Arson. It's what's now called the Flaherty Chronicles. So it's an audio drama. It's a fantasy-themed audio drama, sort of a bit of a Harry Potter style urban fantasy, where a young woman realizes that she's a powerful fairy. So I've been scoring that for the last kind of 6 months. We're now about to start on season 2 of that. So if you want to know what I'm doing in audio drama, go listen to Flaherty Chronicles Arson. And I'm basically here to help. I'm someone who wants to see more people listening to their entertainment and not just watching something because it's like, like in front of you. Yeah. I've had some really awesome nights where I'm lying on the couch and I'm just like, my eyes are closed and your brain is working because your imagination fills in all these gaps and you can't see. You have to imagine, and it burrows even deeper into your mind. And that's what got me hooked on audio drama, and that's why I'm still hooked on it. It really activates your imagination. So I encourage you, give it a listen. I can point you in the direction of like the best sort of 10 audio dramas today that match your style of entertainment, whether it's fantasy or horror or stuff recorded binaurally, like 3D sound. There's all these different categories. So yeah, hit me up. I'll help you out.
Right. Yeah, cool. We'll put some of that in the show notes. I got a list of notes I've been taking all along here with you.
Great, man. Yeah.
Which
Let me help people find their way.
Yeah. And to find out about you, they can go to johnbartmann.com. 2 N's at the end. Bartmann.
Correct.
Right?
2 N's at the end of Bartmann. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to find, in fact, if you Google me, you might find the guy who's been dying continuously for the last 20 years. There's an obituary that dominates the Google search rankings for a guy called John Bartmann. And it's been going on for 2 decades now. So I don't know how many times the guy's died, but he's still up there. He must have been a pretty important cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So johnbartmann.com is my it's the overview of everything I do, and it's got a library of royalty-free downloads, music downloads, and that's where I kind of crank out. It's a lot of experimental stuff, but also stuff that's been used, and it's millions of plays on YouTube now, which is great. I've made it really accessible for people to use in their own videos. So there's some channels that have like adopted me as their theme songs and stuff. So go check it out. It's worthwhile stuff. Getting better all the time. And then, the second avenue is the band, Pravda, which is where my heart and soul resides. And go check out the album that we did in December called The Benefit of Humans. That's a culmination of about 10 years of songwriting that I managed to, and Django Flaherty mastered and mixed that. And I've got some guest musicians from Cape Town on the album, and there's a lot of heart went into that. And then finally is the podcast called How I Make Music, which is available everywhere, Apple, Spotify. And that is where you won't hear my voice a lot of the time. It's mostly other audio drama composers talking about their work, and it's psychedelically edited. So it's not just an ordinary interview experience. It's something which is meant to kind of stop you in your tracks and really transport you and take you away using the power of audio. And those are the main 3 things that I've been occupying myself with, for the last couple of years. So those are the 3 pillars of my creative output at the moment.
And it's all great stuff. And I'm really thankful that you took the time to sit down and talk to us about it and share some of your techniques and practices and all of that.
Pleasure is absolutely mine, dude. I mean, I've got honestly, this is definitely the highlight of at least my month.
Oh, that's really cool to hear. I'm enjoying it very much, and it's your enthusiasm is contagious. So I think cool, a lot of people are going to appreciate that. And I mean, for anyone that's listening to this podcast, I think we'll get a lot out of your podcast, How I Make Music, because it's music production. It's just I don't know. I didn't say it was any kind of music production podcast. It's just music production. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. And what you're doing with the voices and the editing is also another fun layer of listening. So I think
cool, man.
Definitely check it out, everyone. Go to johnbartmann2ns.com and shoot him a line. Make a personal connection. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right, man. Yeah, that's how we came here today. So
that's why we're talking.
I'm not really that type of person who's so important that I don't answer every email. So, shoot me a mail and I'll be happy to help you if I can.
Excellent. Well, cool.
Cool, man. Well,
I hope you and everyone else. Yeah, I hope you guys all have a great rest of the day. Enjoy.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John.